Terror crooks, military spouse, reporting for duty. Let's face it, being a military family member can sometimes be challenging, but it is also extremely rewarding. That's why here at Tara's Tale we talk, advise, learn, and empower. If you're armed with the right resources and information, you can make the most of this military lifestyle. So we offer tips, information, conversation, and most of all, empowerment for the military family. So join us each week here on Tara's Tale at military.com and think about it as them providing you with me, Tara Crooks, your own personal battle buddy.
Hello out there, military families, and welcome to Tara's Tale, where we talk, advise, learn, and empower here on military.com. This week we have with us author Chris Manley, and Chris is a native New Yorker, and she is the author of Resumes for Children. It's a book called Resumes for Children 17 Years Old and Under. It's a guide for parents and other nurturers to develop resumes, or child activity briefs, as she calls them, for their children. This book contains resumes of 21 fictitious children. In the book, you're going to meet a student pilot, a student diver, a student investor, and more. You can order her book at www.resumesforchildren.com and find out more about why in the heck would you want to do a resume for your child. Chris is here to talk to us today. I want to say hi. Hey, Chris.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. Glad you're here with us.
Thank
I want to
you.
point out that there's some noteworthy mentions here that I think need to be mentioned. In October 2006, Emory College at Emory University purchased a significant number of these books and placed them in several Atlanta public schools, and they're like Carver High School, Riverdale High School, King Middle School, and Forest Park Middle School. And in 2007, they purchased more and put them in the hands of more Atlanta public school teachers and students. Western Kentucky University, Bowling Green, Kentucky, has also done this. And so, obviously it's something that needs to be done. And when we talked previously before we did this interview for this show, and I said, Chris, I know people who don't have resumes and they're adults. What in the world is a kid going to do with a resume? So tell me, where'd you get this idea, and what are they all about?
Well, I tell you, I mentioned before this is really how it happened. I worked part-time at a department store, and I worked in the juniors department. Of course, with the teenagers coming in and their parents, and as the kids were going in the dressing room and trying on clothes, the parents and I would talk, and they would tell me the accolades their kids do this, they're involved in this, so-and-so speaks another language, oh, she's going to Europe for the summer, the kids, and I was hearing this, and I'm thinking, this is great. Are we documenting this? So I would ask several parents, I said, does your child have a resume? And again, they look at me like a deer looking at headlights. It's like, huh? Big wide-eyed. And they said, well, what in the world would a child need with a resume? I said, I tell you what. I would also call it a CAB, a child activity brief. Even though they're doing all these wonderful activities, you need to document them. And as you document them, put them in resume style. And as they get into academic programs, you're seeking sponsorship from friends and family to pay for activities. You're looking for internships, fellowships as they go to camps. You need to boost their application with a resume. Number one, it boosts their self-esteem. Some kids don't feel good about themselves, and it will help to put those things down and say, look what you've accomplished at such a young age. And it would just hone their skills. Children can be book reviewers. They can, if they're artistic, they can loan their art out to different hospitals. Believe it or not, children's hospitals display children's art. There's so much that you can do with a child's resume. And again, you're building their little life skills as they grow. And they do display what we call as adults competencies, but they're pint-sized competencies. Your child may display accountability. You've got trustworthiness, you've got organization, and those activities in which they take part in, they display certain competencies. So just like we as adults have a child, they're just pint-sized in children.
Now, you say in the book, it says that most people start creating these things once they're a child, as a junior or a senior in high school.
Yes.
And you don't recommend this. You recommend earlier, right? And why?
Yes, I recommend earlier because you're making your child aware of the right activities to choose as he or she grows. Activities hone different, skills that your child has, and you need to make them aware of that even at a young age. Children are very bright. They're very bright. and they do know what you're talking about. You can pint-size your words down. They will understand. And as they grow, they'll say, maybe 2 or 3 years, they're 6 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old. And as you sit and look at your resume, and I recommend you look at it at least twice a year with your child and say, what have you accomplished? And they'll say, oh, okay, did this, did that. And you may even see a pattern growing as they like specific activities. Say if someone likes to swim or they like the outdoors, and you see their activities going toward, I will say, conservationists, believe it or not. Kids like the outdoors, creativity. You may see what you call just a combination of things developing, and you may see a career path developing in your child, and you may see it at a young age. So that's why I think it's very important to guide them. And as you write what they do down, you'll see things just kind of coming together. And sometimes you may not, because they're young like us as adults. Sometimes we don't even know what we want to do when we grow up.
Right.
And they may not either, but some children do have an idea, and you may see a pattern.
What I'm sitting here thinking is neat is when I was in high school, I was very active and I did a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that I can even remember all the things that I did. But the one thing that my grandmother did for me that wouldn't necessarily be called a resume in my head,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess in a way it was she saved all the newspaper clippings, all the anything that I did, she kept something for. And after she died, I actually found the book, and she kept everything. And some of the stuff I was like, I didn't remember I did that.
Yeah, you don't.
So
yeah,
I think, that would be really neat to have taken all that stuff and put it down on a resume and said, did you know you did this? It's not that you're doing it, but you're not thinking it's something that you might use later in life. You're just doing it because it's fun. Or because it's something to do. So can you provide advice for the children or for the parents, I guess, on how to even begin to develop this child activity brief?
Well, I tell you what, of course, the first indicator of even beginning a child activity brief is your child's enthusiasm concerning, certain activities. So you'll say, well, what do you want to do this year? What do you want to do this summer? I will tell you this. Here in Atlanta, there's a specific school, just to talk about the importance of certain activities. They have an activity day before the first day of school for children to choose what activities they will participate in during the school year. And I thought that was wonderful when I read that on their website. So it's important to give them the life skills that they need. So look to see your child's interests. Explore on the Internet. That's the largest library that we've got. Look to see what activities, first of all, that are free that your child would like to do if your budget is tight. And then look for things that are portable, especially for a military wife. You have children that are going to move. I mentioned a book reviewer. You can move with that. That is easy. That hones a child's skills. Number one, that's a free activity. You build a free library as children book authors send you free books for the child to read.
And how do you get started doing something like that?
Well, there are websites out there, believe it or not, that look for children's resumes. There's one in particular that comes to mind. It's called www.stonesoup.com.
Okay.
And they offer, they look for children's book reviewers as well. Also, kidsreads.com looks for book reviewers.
Okay.
Also, spaghettibookclub.org, they look for book reviewers as well. So I would say look for the free things that parents can do. Ask your child what they enjoy doing and begin with that. So that's the advice I will give with parents to want to hone, some of their children's activities and look for their little weaknesses. Don't forget the little opportunities that they may come across, and you may want to try to hone those as well.
Now, the children's activities and the resumes for children 17 years and under, which is the book we're talking about, they're wonderful and they're creative. And what kind of research did you do to get certain information like the Federal Aviation Administration or the third-class medical certificate, open water scuba certification? I mean, that's pretty creative. So where did you go to do all that?
Well, I had to find out first what, as far as a student pilot was concerned, what are the requirements for a student pilot? There are requirements, and you have to work yourself up. So I went on to believe it or not, the FAA site and some other sites. I just did a Google and Yahoo search, and it told me for a student pilot, what's required, the minimum is a third-class medical certificate. And then for an open water scuba certificate, I even called some sea camps just to ask, what's the minimum age? What are the requirements? So I went to the source. I went to PADI, that's PADI, for divers, the Professional Association of Diving Instructors, and I went on their site and I got that information. So did my research by just going to the specific sources so I can make sure what I documented in the book or wrote in the book was accurate.
Very cool. There's a lot of neat stuff. I'm looking at Stone Soup right now as we speak. So there's just some really neat websites out there that I don't think anybody would have known even existed if we didn't have you come on the show. So
thank you.
What do you tell us? Describe, like, in general, I guess, since we can't visualize this. What do one of these resumes look like?
Well, I tell you what, there is a sample resume on my website, but I have, let me just go over one that is really, really neat. I had thought about within the book. It's from, let's see, an 8-year-old, and I thought about this, and my mom says, oh, that's really neat. It's an 8-year-old, and I just gave her a fictitious name, and she had an obesity problem. It was a challenge for her. So she and her mom began to walk, and as she walked, she got other children in the neighborhood who had the same problem in obesity. And she decided in the neighborhood she would go ahead and start a children's walk for wellness. And as she walked, and the kids walked every Saturday, she had over 25 children and parents walking with her. Now, this would be in a resume. You would also say your biggest results for her was 7 children lost 10 pounds or more and have kept the weight off, and she's one of those children. Also, she can do media appearances. The public broadcasting, and I believe every state has a public broadcasting, they look for children who have accomplished a lot of things. Parents can also contact the public broadcasting networks in their area for their Kids Beat or Kids News and tell about what their child has accomplished. And I would put that under media appearances for children. That's another free thing that a parent can put on the website. Also, children can do, say, this particular child for a speaking engagement. So on a resume, speaking appearances, she can go to elementary school or middle school health fairs talking to children about healthy eating habits and how she got her obesity under control. And all of this I'm even looking at for a resume that I completed for this particular fictitious child. So you have to be really, really creative. You can establish things very easily. I also have a resume in here for a child that he or she can begin a reader's circle for people. My brother used to stutter, and he's grown now. He still stutters a little bit. But for children who have speech impediments and really are kind of scared or a little ashamed to get in front of people, they can begin a reader's circle to hone their reading skills. Meet in someone's house, sit in a circle, and get a novel, get a children's book, and have the children read for about an hour and a half by taking turns. That helps them to build their confidence. That's another thing that you can put on a resume. So I encourage parents to think out of the box when getting activities and thinking about things that they can put for their kids. Again, the book reviewer, Spanish club founder can also go on a resume. If they've gone overseas, there are a lot of cultural things that we don't have here in the U.S. that the kids can experience as military children. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful outlet that they can put on their resume. If they've gone over to Spain, Italy, France, Germany, if they've experienced some of the culturalisms that are over there, or any classes that they've taken, that can go on a resume as well. Any tutoring. There's just a bunch of stuff that they can put on there. Charitable donations. If they train, if they're really good at the computer and they've trained other children, put that down on there.
Well, Chris, these are fabulous ideas. And, of course, the book is called Resumes for Children 17 Years Old and Under. And you can get it at www.resumesforchildren.com, and that's Chris Manley's website. So we really appreciate you coming on today and sharing with us.
Thank you. And if any of your listeners would like the free information, I've got a little brochure here with 10 activities and all of the 10 recommended resources and ideas, and I'd love to send it out to them.
And it's Chris email, right? Chris, Kris, at resumesforchildren.com.
Yes, ma'am.
So, okay, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us here on Tara's Tale today, where we talk, advise, learn, and empower here on military.com. Military families, I'm signing off, but I'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us here on Tara's Tale. Tara's Tale is in no way affiliated with the Department of Defense or any branch of the armed services. Inclusion in this podcast does not reflect endorsement by the DoD, any local government,